Everyone for joining tonight. I really appreciate and I'm humbled and grateful for everyone for tuning in. I'm looking forward to having a respectful dialogue with everyone. I'm looking forward to answering any questions that you may have, and I'm looking forward to sharing some information on what we at CMSA have been hard at work for and what your clubs have been working really, really hard over the past 3 to 4 months to prepare. So what you're going to see tonight is on your screen that gives us a bit of a roadmap. And I'd like to make sure that everyone understands that this is a one-person show tonight. So I'm going to be doing a bit of the crowd control. I'm going to be answering questions in the chat. I'll be presenting. So please, if it looks like I've frozen or if it looks like I'm not here, it's just because I'm taking a second to either grab a drink of water or to present or to switch gears into something else. Okay. So as you can see, there is a chat function within Microsoft Teams. I'd ask that anyone that has questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat. And you can use the little reactions button as well, which either tells me, hey, great job, or I didn't know that, or something like that. But because I can't see anyone tonight, it's important that we engage in some sort of participation like that. If not, and if you're just putting the kids to bed, totally understand, and you're just listening to this, hopefully you'll get a whole bunch of valuable information as well. So before we begin, in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. And really what we're looking to do tonight is to give you an overview of what to expect this outdoor season, and to, as I say, answer any questions that you've got. So quick intro, who am I? Some of you may know me, some of you may not. I'm Calgary Minor Soccer Association's technical leader. So really, I'm supporting your clubs, I'm realigning leagues, I'm working to expand and grow the game and also to develop it at the same time. So lots of work to be done, but that's some of my key roles right now. I've coached players from about U6, U8, all the way through to university level players and aged players. And I'm the former Alberta Soccer Association Regional Coach South and Alberta Recs Director, where my main portfolios of work were around player development, district outreach, and coach education, and really trying to increase the standard of the game province-wide and specifically in southern Alberta. I've worked across the entire Alberta soccer spectrum in terms of grassroots clubs in Edmonton, a professional academy in Edmonton as well, where I was lucky enough to be part of the FC Edmonton coaching staff. I've worked for Alberta Soccer. I've worked with the National Youth Team Development System from U14 camps to U17 camps to U20 camps. I've worked in colleges and universities in Alberta here, and then also through some community outreach. So I've got a really thorough lens on what it's like in Alberta and what the game needs, especially in Calgary. I want to make sure that I pass along some important dates and info from CMSA as a whole. Photo IDs. If it's time to renew the photo IDs, you can do so at the Calgary Minor Soccer Association office, or you can also email in a picture of your son or daughter, and we can facilitate it that way. And then you come in and pick up the printed card. Really, really quick and simple for you. I've still got the Genesis Center information on there, but obviously the date is passed and it's no longer valid. That second bubble there in terms of the logo feedback, CMSA is undergoing a brand refresh and a revitalization. So if you have 2 seconds and an extra piece of technology, we would love it if you could follow that QR code and fill out the logo feedback survey. We'd really love to hear from some parents and what they think. So if you have a moment, or if you're getting bored of listening to me ramble on, please follow that link and do that. And lastly, we're back to hosting the Calgary Cup. This year, we're going to have U9 plus as our ages, and there's loads of teams from across Canada that have reached out and have either registered or expressed interest. Some from Montreal, some from Manitoba, some from BC. So it's looking like a really, really great tournament so far. And if you want more details on that, please visit our website at www.calgaryminorsoccer.com for some more info. I'm going to take 1 second and just let a couple more people in and cruise along. So really, when we approach tonight, I'd like to keep the following principles in mind, because this is what I'm working under, and this is what's really guiding the work that we do on a daily basis. We want to make sure that the game is accessible. So we're bringing the game to players, we're making games as localized as possible, and we're really making sure that as many players can play soccer as possible. We want to also make sure that we're being inclusive of all of the communities of Calgary, whether geographic, cultural, or any other criteria, but we want to make sure that the game is inclusive and that everyone has got a chance to play. We need to make sure that the game is safe, and not just from a physical standpoint, but from a psychological standpoint as well. So you're going to see some things over the next year or so that will highlight how we're looking to make the game safer psychologically for players, for parents, for coaches, and for referees. And hopefully some of those pieces will come out tonight as well. And lastly, we want to make sure that the game is enjoyable, because let's be honest, if it's no fun, we're going to stop doing this. So enjoyment has to be at the center of what we do, and it has to make sure that we take a participant-centered approach on every decision that we make. Just going to pause there. There's a couple of questions in the chat. Can the ID card be mailed? No, unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to do that. But what we do have the capacity is if there's entire teams that need their ID cards refreshed, if the team manager or coaches gather all those together and submit them all at once, we can have a team package and one person can pick those up. Is the Calgary Cup qualifier for provincials this outdoor season? We will get into some of those details here momentarily. But what I was hired for was originally to realign what the district was doing, to examine what we were doing, and to make sure that we're following what best practice would suggest we should be doing. And so first, I looked at, well, how many players are actually in Calgary? And here you'll see a bar chart of player numbers from 2017 up until indoor 2021. Fortunately, when preparing this presentation, we didn't have outdoors numbers quite yet, but that gives you a sense of where we're at. You'll see some lines, like here in the U7s to U9s, spike up like crazy. And that's really because the clubs were meant to declare all of their in-house league players as well. But really, those are the two outliers from where we're at in terms of the rest of the years. And then, what's the trend? So how are we actually doing? And so if you look at this, we're doing a great job at attracting players at the U7 to U9 age groups, but an incredibly poor job at retaining them in the game across all age groups and genders and tiers past U9. So someone could suggest, well, maybe just all of the bad players are leaving, the kids that never really wanted to play soccer in the beginning, the kids that their parents signed them up and they never actually wanted to play. Well, potentially, but I would say that if that is a common trend across numerous age groups, we actually have a player retention problem. So how do we change that? And so some of the things that you're going to see tonight might look a little odd. They might feel a little strange. They might be very non-traditional from what we would expect from a sport. But I'd like you to keep an open mind, because some of these initiatives are backed by best practice, and other ones we're piloting to see if we can change some of these trends. And guaranteed there's someone in the room right now that's thinking, well, surely we're doing an amazing job at producing elite level athletes. So elite level, the Scott Kennedys, the Sam Adekugtis, the Aaron McLeods, top level national team players. And while this data that you're seeing on the screen is about 10 to 12 years old now, we're not actually doing a great job as a country developing professional players. And our chance for at this time, men or women, to become a professional is about 0.02%, which is the worst in the CONCACAF region. And statistically, we were actually the worst in the industrialized world at developing soccer players, but yet we rank 10th in the world for the number of youth players. So how can we fix this? And so part of my role was to develop a technical plan. And through this technical plan, we have we've been able to start to rethink how we've been doing things and start to actually have a plan laid out to have both retention and development of players, coaches, referees, and you, the parents, which is awesome. So I thank you all very much for joining me tonight. You'll see here a quick update around the govern sphere and where we've been at. And if you at any point want to look this up and see where we're going, you can find this document on our website. And it'll tell you what we're doing, where we're doing it, and how we're doing it, so that we're transparent and we're open and honest with you as parents, players, and coaches as well. In the develop sphere, you'll see some of these pieces have had to have been delayed. That's due to a couple of constraints internally, but also a couple of constraints within the environment. So we're looking to get those delayed pieces back on track and back going forward. And lastly, into the growth sphere, this is primarily around our women in soccer, our women and girls in soccer committee, pardon me, in the Empower Her committee, which we're forming to explore opportunities to grow our Calgary girls and women through soccer. And we've got some exciting initiatives lined up for this this outdoor 2022 season along that, which I'll speak to a little bit shortly. I want to make sure that we're having a quick chat about the Canada Soccer Player Pathway and that there's an understanding from parents about what all of this is, because this diagram can look a little overwhelming and confusing, but with a little bit of explanation, it's actually quite simple to understand and comprehend. So down here, you've got your number 1, 2, and 3, your active start, your fundamentals, and your learn to train. That's the base of the pyramid, if you will, but you'll notice that it's no longer representative of a pyramid, because the goal is to have players flow through from bottom to top and from left to right. So you'll see as you progress through the learn to train stage, you would move into your Soccer for Life, which is your community stream, your competitive stream, or maybe into your train to train stage, which are the development leagues here in Alberta and across the country. And what does it look like? And what are some of the logos and organizations operating at each one? Well, here you'll see Calgary Minor Soccer operating from active start all the way through to Soccer for Life in a youth context. And then we transition into an AYSL, or some of those AYSL players and coaches, they flow between both. And that's why you'll see these triangles between the boxes. If you continue to show that you've got competence and ability and other pieces, you'll flow through into a Rex program or a pre-MLS Academy program within the Whitecaps in box 4.5. Again, if you continue to progress, you'll end up into youth national teams, into the full residency program within the Vancouver Whitecaps system, or the Girls Elite Rex out in Vancouver. Those are our partner clubs in terms of our player development and our players who are selected into those programs. That is their pathway. For the vast majority of the players, we hope to see a Soccer for Life in terms of a competitive or community flow up into CUSA, which is Calgary United Soccer Association, or the Calgary Women's Soccer Association as well. From there, players will often transition into university leagues, college leagues, the NCAA, USL2, or UWS. And then lastly, that top right-hand box of Train to Win really is reserved for our national teams, our Vancouver Whitecaps, the MLS team, and Cavalry FC operating in Calgary here as well. There's very few teams in Calgary that actually need to win games. And of those teams, you're not looking at many at the youth level. So that Train to Win, that's a reason why it's only win in that top right-hand corner. I want to make sure that we talk about an initiative that we had in the winter and that will continue into the outdoor here. And it's an initiative called competitive balancing. And what we look to do is we look to have more like with like games more often. So we want teams that are of a similar ability, similar competence, to be playing games as often as possible against each other. So an indoor was the first year that we had launched this. And usually when you do something for the first time, it's got some warts and some bumps and bruises, which you don't even know yet. And that's certainly what we learned from indoor, and we're taking those learnings into outdoor. But we did one round in indoor, and what we found is it had a profound effect on decreasing the goal spread per game. And I'll chat a little bit about that right now. The goal spread per game, say one team scores 6, the other team scores 3, that goal spread would be 3 goals for the game. So as you can see here, there was an adjustment that saw goal spread improvement, so tighter games, 1, 2, 3 goal games, in 26 out of 26 out of 38 divisions that CMSA ran in indoor. So outstanding success from this initiative to get us closer matches after the holiday period. But what we found in those 12 divisions that didn't see a goal spread, and I'll direct you down to this bottom of the chart here, is that the goal spread increase was actually quite small as well. Anywhere from 0.08 goals, so negligible, to only 1.04 goals per game. So that tells us that this initiative is both well received and a worthwhile endeavor. Now, there were some hiccups. I'm not going to say it was perfect, but what I will say is we've learned some things, and we will make sure that outdoor is done even better. And I'll get into what that looks like shortly here. The end goal of competitive balancing is to have meaningful competition more often for players. And so meaningful competition can take many forms. Meaningful, meaning what's relevant to that player at that point in time and is going to give them adequate competition to help them both enjoy the game and develop through the game, but also meaningful so that both groups are not wasting their time on a match day. That's really, really important, and we don't want to see players doing that. I want to make sure that we chat a little bit about the coaching standards that we're asking for within CMSA. And I'm trying to answer a couple of questions and let people in, so give me one sec. This is what the coaching pathway looks like in our country right now. So you've got these community stream workshops at the bottom that are standalone courses that we encourage and strongly encourage all of our coaches to be taking based on the age and stage of the player that they're working with. So you can see there that you're not going to take the same course if you're working with U5s as you would working with U14s. Very different animals that you're working with, so very different courses. And that one course for a coach does not take them through their entire coaching journey, because as players mature, as they develop, we would expect that coaches also develop themselves. So you can look to start in any one of those community stream workshops, and I would encourage you to. They're fantastic. They've got some great content. And even as a parent, you'll get some great insight into potentially even the little creature that you've got living in your house. You can register for any of these courses at canadasoccer.com. They range between $20 and $30 for a theory component, and then there's a practical component that goes on field as well. Or you can look to do some entry-level coaching courses at the C license level, and that information can be found at albertasoccer.com. A little bit more expensive, a little bit longer of a time commitment, but it opens up the doorways for both a children's license and a youth license, or if you want to work in a senior performance stream, 18 plus, you would work through that box on the right-hand side and go towards an A license. I currently possess an A license, but that is because that was the only real pathway that was available to me when completing my licensing. So I'll look to go back and complete both a children's and a youth license at some point here in the near future. This is what CMSA has produced and publicized on our website. And what you'll see is a combination of both green, yellow, and blue check marks. Green check marks is what's required for a minimum of 2 team officials on each team, which is really respect in sport. We should have a police clearance with vulnerable sector search on here as well, but it kind of goes without saying that that is a necessity for all of our coaches to have. Then you move into these yellow check marks, and really it's a recommended program to support the development of youth. So it's both making ethical decisions and then your coaching course or your coach's coaching course to facilitate that development. It's only recommended right now because we haven't written it into our rules to say this is what's mandatory, this is what needs to happen. But that is coming very shortly and very soon. And the making ethical decisions piece will come through the club licensing to take place both from now until about May of 2023. We're not going to chat about the club licensing piece tonight. We can save that for another one. But I really wanted to highlight the bottom quote there. And it's really a knowledgeable coach who's a good role model was the top response in our recent indoor 2021-2022 survey across both players, parents, and coaches. So that's what we all want. We want knowledgeable coaches who are good role models. And this is what we've communicated to the clubs in terms of the standards we expect of our coaches right now, and that we're encouraging these clubs to go towards. So I would encourage you to ask your club, what sort of qualifications does my coach have? Really, really vital question, because as you can see on the bottom, teams with a qualified coach will lose about 5% of kids per year, but teams with an unqualified coach will lose 26% of kids per year. And while I'm not blaming the coaches for some of our trends in terms of player retention, I'm suggesting that it could be a piece of the jigsaw puzzle as to why kids are leaving the game. So that should give you an awareness of where we are and what we're looking for, and also help you ask some good questions. I want to make sure that I mention the educational resources that we've worked really hard to prepare over the last 4 to 6 months here. And one, if you've got younger kids in your house, is around the Grassroots League. I'd encourage you to watch it. It gives a full rundown of what the Grassroots League is, what the philosophy is behind it, and what we're trying to do with our youngest age groups. It's a 6-minute watch. It's way better than reading the 40-odd page guidebook that I've written. So I'd encourage you to give that a look. If you've got some children who are slightly younger in that U10, U11 kind of age range, developmental and recreational programming has now been defined to help parents in registering in the correct programming that their child is interested in, not that their child is capable of participating in based on their ability. We want to make sure that we're moving away from ability-based programming at these young ages and into what is interesting for my child. And then lastly is around the lopsided game strategies, which will be produced in the next couple of days and uploaded onto Calgary Minor Soccer's YouTube, which you can certainly subscribe to, and then you'll be the first to know when we are putting out educational resources and messages. Cup competition. So there's already been a question in the chat about the cup competition. So I'm hoping whoever asked that is listening right now and they haven't fallen asleep already. Cup competition. So what we've done is we've taken the provincial qualification out of the league and we've put it into a separate cup competition. Now, someone's probably thinking, oh, well, this is just a way to make money. Well, it's not, because it's actually at about a quarter of the cost of what the old fall league was, and you're going to get a phenomenal experience. Our goal is to really make sure that this cup competition is a different and memorable experience for those players involved in it. It's completely optional for the clubs to compete in it. And the reason why we've done it this way is that if you're a part of a team or your child's a part of a team that maybe they get off to a rough start, they lose the first 2-3 games of their season, most of the time, there's no chance for them to qualify for provincials anymore. So rather than having that provincial qualification mechanism rest solely on kids who are going through a developmental journey within the game, whose performance is up, down, left, right, forwards, backwards on any given day, and generally changes with the direction of the wind, we want to make sure that we give these children and these coaches an opportunity to see, what does a must-win game feel like? What does that look like? How do we prepare for an opponent differently? So we think that there's going to be some good outcomes in terms of both the coach development, the player experience, and also the player development from these cup competition matches. You'll get loads more information on this in the coming week or so. We're just finalizing the last minute details, and we're looking forward to sharing that with everyone. I'm going to pause there for 2 seconds and see if there's anything in the chat. I don't see anything. It's a quiet group tonight, not like the 7s to 9s or the 10s and 11s or the 12s and 13s. Everyone's like, we've been here, we've done this, just keep it moving. We got shows to watch tonight. I get it. So empower her. This is our Women and Girls in Soccer initiative, and it's targeted around 4 key areas: around playing, coaching, officiating or refereeing, and then another stream as well. So around the player, we're going to have social drop-in nights where it's free to play, it's completely unstructured, the DJ's there playing, and it's going to be a great time. We're going to move these throughout the city and have it reoccurring probably every 8 weeks or 6 weeks to make sure that accessibility is there for all players in this city. To be determined on the dates. We just had to postpone our first one. It was meant to be on April 30th, but we've had to move it back based on our season launch. And the other piece that we want to do is around a big sister program. So we want to connect university players to our local district teams so that those teams have got a role model they can ask questions of. Hey, how did you get here? How do scholarships work? How did you deal with this really difficult situation? And integrate those university students into the team to provide that pathway and that vision for our young female players to see and to experience as well. We've coordinated so far with a few of the universities and colleges, but more details to come, and we're trying to get that sorted here for this outdoor. I've a question in the chat. May the trained coaches, the community stream in the community run programs, can the trained coaches coach in the community run programs not registered with ASA? I suppose if it's not a part of the structured system, I really don't know, and I don't have much of a comment on that. But any sort of coach development and coach training is always worthwhile, in my opinion. In terms of more around the Empower Her, in the other sphere, we want to make sure that we're connecting our young women with local business leaders, local role models, local visionaries in women in business and women in life, really. And so on International Women's Day in early March, the theme was Break the Bias. And we held a fantastic webinar with Shahiza Haji, who's a successful local entrepreneur who is really, really well spoken and has put on a fabulous chat where she's openly talked about the biases that she's occurred in her career and how she's using those lessons that she learned in sport to overcome some of those biases to be very successful. I'd encourage you, if you want, to go to Calgary Minor Soccer's YouTube and to give that a watch. And if you've got young girls or a daughter within your household, I would encourage you to watch it with her, because these are the biases that she's going to have to overcome in order to be successful. And lastly, in the coaching piece, we subsidized 12 female coaches from the Calgary Minor Soccer Association to do their C license. And they're just wrapping up here. They're almost done. And really the question is who's next? We want to make sure that if we go back to that chart, that female coaches are with female teams by Outdoor 2024. So we've got 2 years of runway there, but that 2 years is going to expire very, very quickly. So I'd encourage you, if you're there on the sidelines anyway, if you're showing up to watch, coaching course is a great way to get a different view of the game and also to give back to the game a little bit. And some people will say, well, I never played soccer, so I can't coach. I've actually found the best coaches and the ones most willing to give it a go and to have an open mind are the ones who haven't played before. They're the ones who turn out to be very receptive to new initiatives and ideas and put players first quite often. I'm not saying that us veterans and the ones who have played don't. I'm just saying that's some of my experience. And lastly, around the officials, we've been able to subsidize numerous entry-level courses for our new female officials as well. We started out at the beginning of Outdoor 2022 in our planning with 17 youth female referees out of 250 odd. So you can see where there's a massive problem and a massive opportunity for our young women, because we want to put female referees in the female game. So if you think about a great part-time job potentially, look no further. There'll be heaps of hours for you. But what we've been able to do is we've been able to take that number of 17. We found 35 young women in our soccer community to take the entry-level course, and we've thus tripled our capacity for Outdoors 2022. So we're really, really proud of that, and we'll touch on some of the referee pieces here in a moment. I'm going to stop there one more time and have a look at the chat. See that there's a question on the cup competition, the only qualifying event for provincials. Yes, there is no other qualification mechanism there. You have to win the cup, or I think it's the top two, and depending if we host that division, it could be the top three, but you have to win the cup competition. Okay, moving along into the referees piece. Within our technical plan, there's three pieces to the referees. One is attract, one is retain, and one is progress. So those are the three key areas that we'll look at in the referees. And so the attraction piece is that entry-level course. And we've had over 100 new referees take the entry-level course in prep for Outdoor 2022. Now, the challenge is going to be how many of those 100 do we retain? And so this is where some of our initiatives like the Teal shirt campaign come into play. So what you're going to see on the field is you're going to see referees that have got a teal shirt on. Within that teal shirt, on the back, it'll say new referee. This is an acknowledgement that this referee is brand new to the game within their first year of refereeing. If you choose to abuse someone who is brand new to refereeing, who's going to make mistakes, then I would suggest you have a good hard look in the mirror of what you're doing and what your place is in youth sport. And while this may come across as angry and aggressive, the stats from our referees in terms of how often they are abused or see abuse are staggering. It is almost every other game. So you have a choice. We can live with some mistakes that referees make and are going to make, the same way that players make mistakes, same way that coaches make mistakes, and we can be gentle and empathetic with where they're at and what they're doing in their journey, or we can continue to abuse them. But really, it's our choice. And while it's not in rules yet, the suggestion of abusing a teal shirt referee will be very, very extreme punishment in comparison to the norm. Simply not okay to be even having a go. And the next time, come on, ref, goes into your mind, just swallow it. Some of these brand new referees will be assistant referees or linesmen, lineswomen on some of your games and your children's games. Again, they might not be wearing that teal shirt at the moment because they've got to look like an entire referee crew and match the center official and the other assistant referee. But I would have an awareness that these people are learning. They're learning what offside is. They're learning how to spot which player gets or which team gets that throw in. So have a think the next time you want to have a go at a referee. The other piece that we're trying to implement within the retain is around a mentorship program for them. So these brand new referees, all 100 of them, will be put in a little pod where they'll have access to a mentor referee or a referee of tenure who's been around it, seen a lot of it, and knows how to handle certain situations. Those mentors are going to be at 4 out of the first 20 games of their mentees' refereeing career. So we want to wrap a big woolly coat around our new referees and say, we love you. We care about you. We want you to be involved in this beautiful game. And we want you to feel safe while we do that. So I know I've come across maybe a bit harshly from someone who used to think it was okay to question every single call, to have a go at referees, to think that they knew nothing. They're very knowledgeable people who are doing this and doing refereeing because they enjoy it. And that's what the survey responses are telling us. They don't do it because they're getting rich off of it. They don't do it because they want to make sure that one team wins and one team doesn't, that they can fix the game so one team's on top of the league and the next. Trust me, they have no investment in any sort of U14 or U17 game. They're there because they enjoy refereeing. So I want you to have a think about that when you next time you're at a game. I'm going to stop. I'm going to go to the chat and see. Kevin's asked a great question. Are there set dates for the Cup? Are they known? Cup competition, we're looking to launch it within 1 week. So that will mean it'll probably be a Cup week. And then what will happen is your Cup games will go alongside your schedule throughout the rest of the season. And while having set designated days is the ultimate goal for it, I don't want to commit that too quickly because we deal with constantly changing facility constraints. We deal with an unknown number of fields at times, and we want to make sure that we can provide the proper rest in between a league match and a cup match for these players as well. So it might look a little patchwork quilt for year one, but as we get going from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, we'll become much more sophisticated and we'll become much more set in stone. Again, with the first year of launching something, there's always going to be some hiccups and headaches. So this is one of those pieces. But what I will say is that we're aiming to have a set date for the Cup games. Okay, into what everyone actually wanted to hear tonight. I put it at the back so you don't just all bail after 5 minutes. I wanted to chat about these kind of 3 core things that are going to be affecting the U14s to U19s this year. So one is around biobanding. So what is biobanding? I'll give you the scientific definition. Biobanding is the process of grouping athletes on the basis of attributes associated with growth and maturation rather than chronological age. So children of the same age vary considerably in biological maturation, with some individuals maturing in advance or delay of their peers. So what does that mean? Well, kids grow at a different rate. Kids develop at a different rate. So what we've done is we've expanded the biobanding process and application. It used to just be like U9, U10, and now it's all throughout all of our leagues. And really, this is to allow for more flexible player placement. So what we're saying is just because you're a 15-year-old and maybe physically you might be a bit behind your peer group, it's okay to go and play down an age group. That's totally fine if it's going to give you the right developmental outcomes, if it's going to enhance your experience within the game. Or maybe you're a single parent and you can only get your kids to one game and they're within a year or so or a year and a half of each other. We'll have them play together to make life a bit easier for you. Again, when I say that some things will go against our traditional view of sport, this is one of those things where traditionally it's you're 15, you play U16, non-negotiable, or you play up into U17. And really, there's a lot of clubs and associations around the world that believe that players can play up, but players can also play down. Tottenham, for example, will play players in their age group 70% of the time. They'll play them up 15%, and they'll actually play them down 15%, so that they're working on different developmental outcomes with that player when they're playing down as well as up and in their age group. It's a very deliberate approach to the player development. And I think that we can start to take more of that approach and mindset here in Calgary. I want to make sure that I mention the CMSA process on this as well. And so what happens is the club will apply for a player to be biobanded. They'll go on our website, they'll find the form, they'll submit an application. They'll give the reasons why they would like to bioband that player. And when they do that, they've got to communicate via email to their opponents and copying Calgary Minor Soccer on that email. So then the community knows, okay, there's an older player playing in this team. We know that, we acknowledge that, we're doing the same thing. It's a non-negotiable then. We don't need to have a moan about it. We didn't have one single complaint in indoor with the over 180 players that were biobanded. The other piece is parents of the biobanded player are informed in writing as well, the length of the biobanding, as well as the outcomes and rationale for the biobanding. So why are we actually doing it as a club or as a coach? Why are we doing this? And again, Calgary Minor Soccer's also on all of that correspondence. And lastly, the club has to outline to the player and parents that the activities that are removed through biobanding are that the player will likely not be eligible for provincial competition if you're biobanded to a lower age group than their birth year. And a transfer to an older age group prior to the transfer deadline would allow this player to participate in those provincials. Sanctioned tournaments might also be a problem where players must be of the proper year of birth to participate. So that gives you some idea of the great things that it's used for, but also some of the things that get taken away as well. And I'm sure that there's going to be a question or two in the chat on this. In the referee piece, has there been a thought about using a teal patch on assistant referee jerseys? Not up until right now, but I love that idea, and we'll probably steal it and not give you credit for that. But it's a phenomenal idea. I love that. The question here, is ASA going to align with biobanding as well to ensure that a biobanded CMSA player that's playing an age group down can still play with their team in provincials? I can't comment on how ASA orchestrates or runs their provincials. What I can say is that it's much easier for a district to be nimble and to move quickly and implement these kinds of strategies, much more than it is Alberta Soccer with 23 districts to try and align. So in a lot of ways with this biobanding process, we're leading the charge province-wide to put players first and to make sure that we've got flexible player placement. As with anything, those who go through the wall first typically get a little bloody. So we're learning some pieces as well. But we're also trying to influence the system as well to say most of these people, and I'm going to say 95% of these people that have utilized biobanding players, and when I say people, I mean club technical staff, I mean coaches, etc. Most of them are not doing this so that they can just win matches or have some unfair competitive advantage. And if that was the case, we'd have heard rampant complaints from some people. We know it. With no complaints, clearly the community was able to be accountable and to police themselves and to make sure that this endeavor was implemented appropriately. Again, the fear is that it is used for a competitive advantage and you bring older players or ringers in, and thus ASA, I believe, will be a little slower to adopt something like this to have those players play at provincials. What should some of your expectations be as parents, lastly, around this biobanding piece? You should expect that maybe a team or two have got an older player on their roster. Maybe the club didn't have that team and the player really wanted to play with that group. That's their social group. That's who they go to school with. I don't know, but you should expect to see this on the field in outdoor. Next, just chatting about team placement and how this has worked. So team placement has gone through a bit of a modified process this outdoor. So rather than do 2 rounds of competitive balancing through the outdoor, we said, can we do 1 round straight off the hop before a season actually starts? So what we did is we had we had clubs enter their teams as they normally would. They go through a team entry and they submit all of the teams that their club is going to have. Awesome. What we then did is consolidate that list. We sent it out to the clubs and we actually brought the clubs into CMSA on one day to say, right, here's what every single group from U10 to U19 looks like. Every gender, every tier, every age. What do you think? Because they know the players and they know the teams far better than I ever will, or far better than CMSA ever will. And a lot of them looked at the groupings of where they entered their teams and they went, you know what, actually, that group should be playing there with them. They get really good games there. And that group should maybe be playing there. So what you'll see is you'll see potentially 50-50 age group split teams. Let's call it an 07-08 team from a club. And they've looked at the two pools, both at, say, a U14 and a U15 level. And they've gone, wait a minute, that the U15s, even though half of our squad is U15, we'll get much better games in the U14 age group. So in the league, they'll actually play in that U14 age group. Now, I'm setting your expectation now so that when this happens, not if, but when, there isn't 1,000 emails that come into CMSA saying this club and this team is playing overage players. We already know. The clubs themselves already know, and they're comfortable with it. We're going through a seeding round at the beginning of the year. Again, we talk about competitive balancing. After that seeding round, we'll have a look. If those groups of players who are, say, a 50-50 split are not at the right level with playing down, we'll just move them up. All good. No problems there, right? So our seeding round is designed to help us achieve some of those outcomes. Nothing in the chat, which is lovely. And lastly, just around that competitive balancing, which I just alluded to. Round one, before the season started. Round two, after the seeding round, where we'll look to move some teams, and that right after the seeding round will be the first week of the Cup. So it'll buy us a little bit of time to move those teams, to remake the rest of the schedule, and then away we go. And then again, we'll evaluate it by goal spread to see were we good or were we bad? What improved, what didn't? Awesome. Want to make sure that I mention some of the standards that we're looking to align to from both Canada Soccer and some of our other governing bodies. What you're looking at on the screen right now is long-term player development. And this was released in 2008, 2009 time, and it gives you a good outline of the U11 to U15 female player and the U12 to U16 male player, and really what they should be doing and what sort of standards they should be achieving. And you'll see here, 8-a-side, 9-a-side is completely recognized there, and your recommended training times, coaching qualifications, etc., are all in there. In that training to train stage, and again, those are those developmental leagues that we talked about, right? Right through into stage 5, which is again that next performance level for those players, into stage 6, which is train to win, which unfortunately none of our kids are at quite yet. And then also into our soccer for life. And really that's where the bulk of our players reside, that competitive and that community stream, and in that soccer for life from U13 to U18. So you'll see there loads of information. If you would like to give this a read, please visit our website in the next couple of days. I'll make sure that this document is on the website, but you can also find it just by Googling long-term player development, or LTPD Canada Soccer. And you can see here, it's the Wellness to World Cup brochure. So on that piece, I'm going to leave up my contact information here on the screen. Typically, I don't engage very much on Twitter in terms of a back and forth or a dialogue, but if you do choose to write me an email, I try to get back within 48 to 72 hours. Sometimes it is a little longer, and I apologize for that. But there's a high volume that come in. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and please follow us on our social media accounts. We disseminate a lot of valuable information through those social accounts, and I would encourage you to give them a follow and give some of the content a quick watch. That image on the left-hand side there, I leave all of our clubs and all of our chats with that same image. And really what it speaks to me is that all of our clubs pull in a direction. We don't know if it's the best direction or a great direction, or if it's opposite of some other club. And I'm not saying that we all need to be the exact same, because clones don't often provide much creativity and innovation. But what I am saying is we need to operate more on the right-hand side of the diagram, where we pull in a similar direction. Not necessarily the same direction, but a similar direction to keep the game moving forward, to keep putting players first, and to keep coming together as a community within Calgary. So with that, I will be quiet for a few moments. I will thank you so very much for joining me tonight. You could be anywhere in the world doing anything, and I'm just grateful that you tuned in tonight and that you're invested in your child's soccer journey and also to understanding what's going on.